and welcome everyone to Women's Health Tech Wednesdays. I am your host, Nina Joshi. And before I introduce today's guest, I have a couple of quick announcements for you all. We're actually having a flash sale on our Breakthrough One Alliance memberships. So 50% off all memberships. Use the code in the chat or on the screen. We also have New York Health Innovation Week of 2024 coming up in May, and tickets for that is also available using the QR code or the chat. And our January symposium is tomorrow, so make sure that you sign up. It's going to be an incredible event. And with that, would like to formally bring on our guest for today, Ebony Travis, who is the Director of Global Wellbeing and HR at Boston Scientific. Thanks so much for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Nina.
I am so excited to dive into today's conversation, but I think a great place to start would be, Ebony, for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and really the journey that has led you to here at Boston Scientific.
Yeah, so I'm Ebony Travis Tichenor, Director of Global Wellbeing and HR Employee Policies here at Boston Scientific. I've been with the company going on 27 years this year, I'm excited to say. I like to tell people I started when I was 13, but I've held a variety of roles, starting from the bottom and just working my way up. I've been in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space, the compliance space, legal space, the DEI space with the HR role, and now I am under Total Rewards, the benefits group, focused on our global well-being strategy, as well as, most importantly, our employee policies.
Love that. And super excited to kind of dive into so much of all of the programs and really your philosophy around it. But maybe a good place to start, kind of coming from your particular expertise, is, what are some of the ways that we can integrate principles of DEI into initiatives that are focused on women's health and well-being? I think, we hear a lot about the importance of having these more comprehensive and really intentional programming. So really curious to kind of get your take on it.
Yeah, when you think about integrating DEI into women's health and well-being initiatives, we've really got to think about diverse representation, right? We know diversity of thought, varied backgrounds, things like that are so important when it comes to making decisions, right? We can't just make a decision and assume that that decision should just be a blanket approach for everyone. You need the diverse perspectives. And we also think about, removing barriers. So you need that equitable access. The economic, geographical limitations that are out there. And then we also think about the cultural sensitive care, right? We have to think about the respect and adapting services to that for the different cultural norms that are out there. I also think about data, research and data. That is so important as well, because, we have to ensure that diverse women, diverse thoughts, are in the research to gather that comprehensive data, right? Mm-hmm. And let's think about policies, policy advocacy. We have to promote policies that address the disparities in women's health. And I also think about the partnership and collaboration, right? We have to work with organizations, other companies that represent the diverse groups, the diverse voices. Absolutely. And lastly, I'll say the continuous learning and improvement, right? Mm-hmm. Evaluating and adapting those initiatives based on the feedback that we're gathering, right? The research, the data. Definitely. From the diverse groups, because these strategies ensure that the initiatives, the health initiatives, are not only inclusive, but effective and responsive to, the needs of all women.
I love that. And I love that you are touching on the policy, the data, all of these kind of different aspects come together. It really takes, so much to kind of create something that's sustainable and that's interconnected. So I love that you kind of called that out. And I think what you're doing is really just painting a picture of like the role and really the importance of workplace diversity and promoting women's health. So if you could kind of expand on that a little bit and really talk about, what can organizations do to really foster this kind of inclusive environment? What are some of the steps that they can take?
Yeah, we know that workplace diversity plays a crucial role, especially in promoting women's health. The data is out there. Research shows that diversity truly can make a difference. And we have to embrace it. Mm-hmm. And we have to think about the broader perspectives in healthcare solutions. A diverse workforce brings together that varied perspectives, experiences, the knowledge. And again, diversity is crucial in understanding and addressing those unique health needs, those challenges that we are faced as women.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I also think about, it also plays in the communication, the understanding piece, right? It's making sure that diversity in the workplace fosters an environment where there is greater sensitivity and understanding towards the different health issues affecting women today. Because we know that this can lead to better communication with patients
Mm-hmm.
and among our healthcare providers as well. And this will result in something positive, which is more effective. And let's be real, personalized care.
Mm-hmm.
And then we think about it also plays a role in the innovation and the research in the inclusivity, right? We have to think about, again, I'll say it again, the diverse teams in healthcare, research and development that can ensure that the studies and innovations consider that wide range of the health conditions and variables affecting us as women.
Mm-hmm.
And this inclusivity in the research, it can actually help in developing those treatments and
Right.
those healthcare policies that are more effective and equitable for all women, you
Absolutely.
know?
100%. And I think just hearing you talk is getting me so inspired because I really can see like this picture that you're painting where it really is something that's so all-encompassing and just a huge and kind of, specific single driver that can cause so much really positive change. So I love it. Can you, and Ebony, I would love if you could maybe share, you have such a wealth of experience in this space. Are there any specific, examples or stories, things that you can turn to of, successful strategies, things that you've seen or you've implemented that really enhance not only kind of diverse, talent acquisition that we were talking about when it comes to diverse teams, but also retention kind of within the context of women's health programs?
Yeah, in my experience, and even, just being around or working with other companies,
Mhm.
some successful strategies are things from, targeted recruitment. And I know targeted seems, it could be sensitive to some, but when I say targeted recruitment, it's really about collaborating with organizations and educational institutions to attract more diverse talent, diverse candidates.
Mhm.
And we think about the diversity of thought, the diversity of background, that diverse individual that's bringing in that perspective. Another great strategy is your job descriptions. Are they inclusive? Are we using the gender neutral language and highlighting commitment, true commitment, not just words, but
Mhm.
true commitment to diversity in those job postings? Another one I'll mention is, the mentorship and career development, right? Are we offering mentorship by, successful other women in the field and making
Mhm.
sure that there's clear career advancement opportunities for others?
Mhm.
And I'm going to go back to the hiring piece because I think the piece that's missing from there is that bias-free hiring practices. It's been said, you got a brain, you got a bias. Let's be
Mhm.
real.
Mhm.
It's there, and sometimes we don't even know it's showing up, but
Mhm.
it does. We're human, so we
Yeah.
have to think about training our leaders, those hiring managers, to recognize the unconscious bias that is happening and using a type of structured interview panel that is diverse, especially when we're hiring women, right? We don't want it to be all men,
Mhm.
and we don't want it to be all white men. We want to
Mhm.
make sure there's a diverse panel there so that there's that equal opportunity, you know?
Absolutely.
And I think another one is the health and well-being. My near and dear to me right now,
Love it.
well-being is we have to think about those health and well-being programs. And are we tailoring programs to women's specific health needs? Are we thinking about that, right? From a mental, physical, emotional, financial perspective.
Mhm.
And I would also say, most importantly, for the leaders that are here on this line, it's that leadership commitment. That is another successful strategy. When your leaders from the top down are committed and they
Mhm.
show it, they walk the talk, they believe it, they speak to it, and they're actively supporting and participating in your diversity initiatives, that can truly help with the retention, that can help with the career advancement of those women. And it makes them want to stay with the company because they know that, the organization and the leaders are committed to them in every way possible. So those are just a few successful
Yeah.
strategies that many companies implement and have been very successful at.
Yeah, you just outlined, like, you just gave us a nice little like launch pad for so many great strategies. And I really like, I mean, there's so many things that I 100% resonated with. I think, the last point about how it really just starts with the leaders just showing awareness and commitment to it. I think that
Mhm.
action in and of itself is so powerful. And I also really loved how you talk about language and like the job posting. I didn't even think about that. The job postings, how I'm sure how we're even communicating to,
Yes.
potential hires, et cetera. Really, the power of language plays such a huge role here, I would imagine. I
Most
think that's
definitely.
amazing. And I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit on kind of the well-being and health side of the house. Would love if you could chat a little bit more about, you kind of mentioned, really thinking and tailoring these types of programs or making sure that there's options that are specific to women or women's
Mhm.
health. Would love if you could share a little bit more about, some of the more like cultural competencies and how you factor those in and kind of inclusivity in that aspect when it comes to kind of health and well-being programming.
Yeah, and that's a really good question when we think about the cultural competence and making sure we're inclusive in those health and fitness initiatives, right? And especially for the diverse range of women. I'm really going to take it up a step a little bit higher there is, when we think about well-being programs, and many may call them wellness programs, we have to remember it can't be a blanket approach for everyone. We have to think about the unique needs of everyone. Not everyone can go and be physically fit. Not every, you have to think about disability, right? Not everyone can just go and run 5 miles, and be physically
Mm,
fit. We have to make sure we're thinking about accessibility. We
absolutely.
have to, and again, it goes back to that inclusive programming, right? Design programs that cater to various abilities, ages, body types, cultural preferences,
Mm,
right? There are many in some cultures. I think about, some of my colleagues in APEC where they love to garden, they love to cook, and
yeah.
those are things that cater to their diverse needs of what makes them feel good.
Hmm.
We also have to think about, the health education piece as well, right? Are we incorporating educational components that actually address some of the specific health issues that are prevalent in the
Right.
different communities for our
Hmm.
women? And are we thinking about when we have people that come and do some of these health and fitness initiatives? Is it diverse representation,
Mm,
right? Or is it the same old, same old? We
hmm.
have to ensure that we're thinking about staff and trainers and instructors from various backgrounds to
Hmm.
ensure that participants see themselves represented in what's being
Definitely.
shared with them for a health and fitness initiative. And we think about the community engagement piece as well, collaborating with the local communities to understand and integrate their needs and preferences as well. And I think another one that's really important is about the safe and welcoming environment.
Mm,
Again, when we're
totally.
addressing some of these things, are we creating a space where everyone feels respected? Right?
Hmm.
Because not everyone looks alike. Not everybody, can just show up and be, a supermodel or, athlete that can do this or that. We got to think about representation, creating that safe environment where people respect one another and appreciate them for their whole selves authentically and genuinely, and that it's just free from discrimination, because we have to think about the mental health of
Hmm.
individuals and especially for our women.
Hmm.
So I would say, these strategies help create, health and fitness initiatives that are culturally sensitive,
Definitely.
inclusive, and welcoming to the diverse range of women.
Oh, I love that. I have so many follow-ups, but I definitely want to tack in a little bit more into, the work that can be done. I feel like when we are thinking a lot about, DEI or inclusivity and kind of having these practices, I think people mistakenly think that that's something that can really only be done if you're at like a leadership level and you kind of have a very specific level of influence. But are there any things that organizations can do to really promote kind of, women's health, well-being, making sure that these things are prioritized, even if you are, an entry level or an intern, any insight that you have, as it relates to the various levels in which this can be accomplished.
I always say, it's not always about the title, right? Everybody is a
Mm.
leader in their own way. And I always approach many people that way, that, I may be a director and you're a manager, but to me, we're on the same level.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe anybody at every level can be committed and be an advocate.
Love that.
And, when we think about our leadership from the top down, it is important to ensure that they are committed as well, right? And they are advocating. But I also believe it starts at the bottom as well. I
Mm-hmm.
believe it starts at the bottom and making sure that, if we develop these inclusive policies or processes that address the women's unique health needs, and we include things like flexible work arrangements, comprehensive health benefits,
Mm-hmm.
provide regular training and awareness, we know that this can foster a workplace that is supportive, a culture that is supportive. We also think about when you leverage like your employee resource groups, right? Employees who volunteer to
Mm-hmm.
be a part of something that's bigger than themselves, that allow them to connect in a meaningful, authentic, and genuinely way. This can, when you think about our women's employee resource group,
Mm-hmm.
many of them, especially I think of our own, that are focused on women's health, and they provide that platform for support and advocacy. And they're at all levels of the organization, and they work with our benefits group and well-being to offer tailored health and wellness programs for their members that
Mm-hmm.
participate and join. And they assure accessible health resource access. They promote life work harmony. I don't call it balance, because you're balancing is saying that you are making your life as just as important as your work, and life comes before work, and you
Mm-hmm.
should create harmony in a way that works for you, right? And those are key. And
Mm-hmm.
so organizations that maintain those open channels for feedback, to continuously adapt and improve these initiatives, it can really help in ensuring the advocacy and the championship, and people leading the way, again, at all levels. I think another thing we have to think about is that data-driven approach, right? We have to
Mm-hmm.
ensure that we are monitoring and assessing the effectiveness of everything we do. You can't
Absolutely.
just do it and not monitor the engagement, ensuring that something is making a difference. And so finally, I'll say fostering an inclusive environment where diversity is valued significantly can contribute to the well-being of women at all levels within the workplace. I said a
I
lot.
Wow. No, Kat, I was like, I just in a moment of silence for, I think that was absolutely incredible. And I really, really, I need to like, I'm going to put this on a post-it note of work-life harmony. I think that reframing was so, I think I needed to hear that. I did. So that was amazing.
Yeah.
Really,
Yep.
I think there's so much to dive into. And I'm also kind of curious too, because I think that there's definitely a kind of increasing level of awareness that's kind of stemming from like social media and really,
Mhm.
so much is happening that's coming from that front that I would only imagine is really seeping into this particular space. And I'm so curious to kind of get your thoughts on, if you've seen anything when it comes to the influence of social media and maybe even influencer platforms, how that's maybe connecting into this space a little bit. Just curious to get your thoughts on that.
Oh, yeah, of course. So I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, professional network, but I'm
Mhm.
also a big fan of Instagram. I'm a huge promoter on Instagram about well-being and fitness and health. And I see a lot of that where there is a lot of diverse representation of influencers from various backgrounds, that reflect different communities that are constantly promoting the positive message about women's health and
Mhm.
fitness in diverse communities. And I absolutely am a big fan of that. So I always reshare, follow, you name it. And I think also, the social media platforms allow us to share those expert health and fitness information. It allows us to get that messaging out there one way or another. And it also allows us to share our stories. share our real life journeys. You know, a lot of times I hear people say social media, people don't show up. It's just a way for them to show one side of their life. And I can honestly tell you, as someone who lives her life out loud, who lives her life authentically, you will find me on Instagram, for example, and I live my life just wholeheartedly. It is everything you see is what you see. If you know me, and that's who I am. When you see me there, you see me here in person, you see me on my LinkedIn. I never pivot or change because life is too short and I love life. And so engaging with those interactive posts, you know, when you see them, the accessible content, you know, it's another way where we can promote the message if we start to get engaged in it, right? We start to be a part of the conversation. And I think the other thing is collaborating with health organizations and maintaining consistent messaging, right? And that's something else. Like on your platform, be consistent. Don't waver. Don't waffle back and forth. If you are for women's health, let's talk about menopause. Hey, I'm all about it. Let's talk about it. I'm for it. I'm not waffling. It's real. Okay. And it's using empowering language and incorporating that community feedback for relevance. You know, when you see it and you get it and you want to share it. So I think it's really, really important to think about using that in a positive way to get the message out, get other followers to engage. You engage with them. This approach creates more inclusiveness, informative, and connection. I think it creates connection as well and advocacy.
That is incredible. I wholeheartedly agree. And I think it really is such an amazing vehicle to not only have these more grounded conversations or just interactions, but really make a lot of this stuff digestible, consumable, just kind of have it really embedded through your life. So I love that. I love how you said that, like, life is short and I love life. That's another Post-it note motto from Ebony. So keep them coming. I love them. I know we're about 6 minutes out, and I have still so many questions for you, Ebony, but there is 1 or 2 questions from the chat that I want to make sure that we get to it. So this is a question from one of our participants, and it reads, we have tailored corporate wellness packages that offer individualized health and wellness programs for each employee, but I haven't had as many HR leaders respond to either learn or invest in these packages. What's the best way to get HR leaders that might not be as wellness focused to realize the impact of these types of programs?
You know, and that's a great question. And what I found is it requires maybe setting up those personal connections, the personal one-on-ones to talk about it and to offer your support on how can you help them, you know, work together to get this messaging and this information out, right? Communication is key. It's powerful. And I also think it's also about, you know, the partnership. So a lot of, you know, I deal with the same thing, and it means you have to be more intentional, more forward in saying, hey, do you mind if I set up some time with you to discuss this? You know, take 15, 20 minutes, have your talk track ready, give them a preview of what you want to cover, and just remind them how this information, this packet of information, these resources tie into the business and why the employees need to be aware of it. Because at the end of the day, a company can't run without its greatest asset, its people. And the people need the resources, the benefits, the education to be able to help support their well-being so that they can show up and be their best selves and drive the business for the organization. So tie your messaging into the business, into the strategy, and why it's so important that you get their support in getting that message out.
That is incredible. Thank you so much for that answer. And I hope the question was answered to our participant. I think that's really, really, I think just great, just general advice too, when it comes to like really being able to show the value and kind of make that personal connection. I think that is just really, really incredible. Also kind of wanted to ask you kind of a little bit earlier when you were talking about the kind of health and well-being space, you mentioned mental health and financial health, which I think are some things that can sometimes get a little bit lost. So I love that you kind of painted this broad picture. Would love if you could share, maybe we can start with mental health, but what role does mental health kind of play in your approach to promoting these, you know, well-being programs? And if there's anything that organizations can do to really prioritize mental health support too, when they think about these types of packages?
Great question. Mental health is the cornerstone in promoting overall well-being. I repeat, it is the cornerstone in promoting overall well-being. We have to recognize that mental health issues impact physical health, productivity, and quality of life.
Hmm.
And we have to, as organizations, prioritize that health support for women, for everyone, by providing access to mental health resources, counseling services, stress management programs, and a supportive work environment that acknowledges and addresses issues like workplace stress, anxiety,
Hmm.
life work harmony,
Right.
because we don't leave our life behind when we come to work. And
Hmm.
so sometimes life is happening, and we have to be able to recognize that and ensure that we're offering our employees a moment to pause and to
Definitely.
be able to show them the resources that we have to offer to help support them. And when they feel valued, they feel heard, it is amazing what can happen. And if you look at the data, you do your research, you can help your company save a lot of money by ensuring your employees are able to show up every day if you just are more proactive versus reactive in sharing these resources that you have to offer.
Wholeheartedly agree. And I like that you also called out, mental health is kind of the umbrella, but you all things like the stress management and some of those other programs that are supporting well-being kind of on the spectrum, and really acknowledging that, I think was makes a lot of sense. So I'm really glad that you kind of called that out too. I
Yeah.
love it. Wanted to also kind of ask, you had mentioned a little bit about like the financial health. Are there any specific programs or anything that you've kind of seen within that space? Because I thought that was also really interesting, and probably really, really important too when we're kind of thinking about overall health and well-being.
Yeah, so on the financial health piece, in our company, we work with our benefits team again, and we
Mm,
make sure that we leverage our benefit resources that we have to be able to bring in some of our external partners to do some financial education awareness one-on-one. And we hold these during many times throughout the year, especially during Financial Wellness Month. But it's really bringing in the experts to
right.
come in and talk about why is this important, and here's a one-on-one introduction to financial wellness, and what you can start to do to start to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as you continue to work throughout your career. Are you putting enough money aside? Are you
Mhm.
making sure you're putting enough money aside for your health benefits, those
Right.
additional costs that may come up? So we really do work with our extended partners in the benefits space to ensure we're bringing in those experts to have those real conversations. Even about compensation, we have our compensation team who will also educate our employees on that particular piece when it comes to their pay.
Definitely. And I think it's so incredible how really interconnected this space is, and the work that can be done to really advance it and enhance it, promote it, all of these amazing things. And I just realized that we're at time, which is crazy to me. We definitely need to have a part two of this conversation. But before I let you go, Ebony, I want to ask my favorite question to ask our guests, which is, if you have, I mean, you already gave us so many great nuggets of wisdom, but if you have any words of advice for leaders, participants on this call, maybe folks that are also really interested in this space, anything that maybe a mentor had told you that you want to share with us, or just an Ebony original, would love if you can close us off with some words of wisdom.
You know what I would say from my heart is, love what you do. When you love what you do, it shows. And it
Hmm.
also allows you to take care of you.
Hmm.
Self-care is not selfish. So
Hmm.
take time to ensure you're pouring into yourself before you pour into everything else, into your loved ones, your work, and everything, because life is short. So enjoy it and love it. You can love work, you can love your work, your personal life, and everything can come together perfectly. Just don't put yourself aside. Take
Hmm.
time for you. You won't regret it.
That's a mic drop moment if I've ever heard one. Thank you so much, Ebony, for such an amazing conversation. Really, really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today.